Brian O'Keefe, big football fan, likes everything to do with China. So just like Leland Lazarus here and Xiaosheng, two China fans here. Who's spent time in China, can speak the language. Would you like to say something?
我等会儿再说一下。
And how about you, Leland? Would you like to say something? Okay. Well, the song when and how. Okay. Okay, so he loves a number of things, but he can also come out here on stage and provide some thoughts that are profound and heartfelt. Let's give up a nice round of applause for our very last speaker of the evening, Brian O'Keefe. Thank you.
When I was young, I thought I had a pretty straightforward understanding of what freedom was. If you asked me, I would say freedom is the ability to just do whatever I want. When I was a kid, I felt free if I could play video games instead of doing my homework. When I got that driver's license and I could just get in the car and go. Or on those summer breaks when I had no obligations whatsoever. To me, that was freedom. But as I've gotten older, my understanding of freedom has started to change. I no longer think of freedom as the ability to just do whatever I want, but as the ability to do what I really want. And I think there's a big difference. A little over 5 years ago or so, I was teaching, going into my 4th year of teaching high school in a great school in California. It was a wonderful job. I really enjoyed it. Interesting work, hardworking students. But I had this nagging feeling in myself that something was off. Something was missing. And so I reflected on what this was. And I realized that I had this deep desire to go back to China, where I lived after undergraduate school. And that somehow I wanted to make China and international relations a more central part of my life and my career. So I thought about this for the ensuing year, and then at the end of that year, I packed 2 suitcases and a backpack and got on the plane and went back to the other side of the world. Was I free? Well, nobody was stopping me. I mean, I could go to China, I could stay in high school, I could do something else. That wasn't the problem. The question is, was I doing what I really wanted to? And I knew the answer was yes, because after that reflection, I had a deep sense of peace about my decision. And the Jesuits who followed St. Ignatius of Loyola, they talk about this feeling as consolation. Con with and solari, like to soothe. Consolation is that sense that even though the future is uncertain, you don't really know what's out there, you don't really know what you're going to do or how everything's going to unfold, you have the sense that you're walking in the light, that you're moving towards something, not running away from something, that you're not avoiding anything, and that in general there's just a sense of peace about what you're doing. You know, the interesting thing, if you look at this etymology, is that consolation doesn't necessarily mean feeling great, feeling upbeat, enthusiastic. You can be in consolation even if you're going through something difficult. You know, all of us, I'm sure, have had to say something that was uncomfortable to a friend or a loved one, had to maybe call out a coworker or stand up to a boss. We see people throughout history, right? From Martin Luther King was mentioned earlier, Gandhi, Harvey Milk, people that followed their deep desire of what they thought was right, even though the consequences, even for themselves, were very severe. One of my personal heroes is Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was born in a small northern Minnesota mining town in the middle of nowhere. And nobody could have predicted that this kid would move to New York and within like several short years, between 19 and 25, become the central figure in American popular music. Several years ago, the filmmaker Martin Scorsese made a documentary about Dylan. And he starts the documentary off with a little interview, and then he goes to a concert where Dylan is playing a rock show in 1966 in front of a bunch of fans. Well, some. And then, without any transition whatsoever, he cuts right to this. A still, quiet, desolate image of a snow-blanketed landscape in Minnesota, probably one similar to what Dylan would have seen growing up as a child. And you're struck by this dissonance, like, how did that guy come from that place? You know? How did this happen? Around the same time that this movie was made, another interviewer from 60 Minutes asked Dylan a question, you know, did you have a happy childhood? And Dylan said something that I thought was very interesting. You know, he said, well, you know, I didn't really consider myself happy or unhappy. You know, I just knew there was somewhere I had to get to, and it wasn't where I was at that particular moment. I think that's very interesting because Dylan, for me, really embodies what it means to be free. He followed his deep desire. He followed the vision that was consistent with how he saw himself, even though it cost him greatly. His parents didn't understand what he was doing. He didn't know anybody in New York when he went there. And later, those fans that were at that concert were booing, actually, because he's playing electric music and writing surrealist lyrics, while they wanted him to be their political spokesperson. But I think it's this kind of freedom that has allowed Dylan to continuously discover new dimensions of his art and to keep making what I think is music today that's just as good as anything he's ever done. This kind of freedom, I think, is what we all need, and the great thing about it is it's available to every one of us. But to access it, maybe next time you think about whether you're free, don't think just in terms of what you're free from, the external constraints around you, but are you free for following what's within you? Are you free on the inside to identify your deepest desires and pursue them where they seem to be leading you the most? Thanks.